So hello again, students of the ancient world. And last time we looked at Israel and its great influence, especially its religious and cultural influence upon the Western world and that of the ancient Near East, and how it played a prominent role even though it was a very tiny nation, it occupied a very important geographical position, and it played a key role in many of the diplomatic and political dealings of the great empires of the ancient world. And today we're going to shift our focus a little bit, and we're going to look at the legacies and the history of some of the Bronze Age, the really early Greek civilizations, as well as that of the Phoenicians. And these are peoples who are profoundly different than really anyone else that we have looked at because they form these great maritime empires in the Bronze Age. And the Phoenicians are really the first people who invent alphabetic writing, and that they are expansionist in a maritime way. Now, all the other empires we've looked at are land-based empires, and the Phoenicians are very different, and we'll come to that. But Phoenicia is it's a really tiny area just here north of Israel, and it it just has basically these famous cities here of Tyre, Sidon, Byblos, and so on, that will become eventually great Crusader states. But um, because of its location right on the Mediterranean Sea and its focus towards seafaring, maritime expansion, they were really the great shippers of the world. And as we will see, the Minoans and Mycenaeans, who are the ancestors of classical Greece, of Athens and Sparta and such, they also play a role within this maritime empire. So, without further ado, let us get to these maritime empires. So I want to start off by looking at Minoan Civilization, and this is really the earliest civilization we know of that sort of has Greek inspiration. And it is on the island of Crete. Here you can see this famous great big island in the Mediterranean, just south of Greece. And the Minoans were great seafarers, and that they were great builders. And the reason we know everything we know about Minoan Crete is because of the excavations of Sir Arthur Evans, who was an archaeologist in the 19th century, and he excavated this great temple complex at Knossos on Crete, which is the legendary the capital of Minoan um, the Minoan civilization. And one of the problems we have in knowing a lot about the Minoan civilization is we don't have any writing. We can't decipher their writing. There might be a linear A writing, which is a very, very early Greek writing, but we just simply have not deciphered the writing. And so all we can know is what archaeology can tell us. And there is Evans discovered no evidence of walls within this society, and much like the civilizations of Harappa and Mohenjo-daro in India, early India, in the Indus Valley civilizations, which they might have been a matriarchal dominated society, meaning that women were the ones who led it, because we don't see that this devotion to a warrior culture, we don't see really great images of priesthood or kings, at least very early on within Minoan history. So there's a question there, at least it's been theorized, that this could, like the Indus Valley civilizations, possibly have been a matriarchal society. But again, we only know what archaeology can tell us. And we do know that they were able to build very sophisticated, large complexes with palaces and temples and things like that. And this is you have to kind of be careful with just using archaeology, that you don't assume too much. And Arthur Evans, for instance, when in his excavations he discovers this great palace complex at Knossos, and he immediately thinks that this is the actual labyrinth, which is this great maze that was built and it for this legendary king Minos, who had a son who became the Minotaur, which is this horrific, terrifying creature that had a head of a bull and the body of a man, and so Minos built this labyrinth there in to contain this creature that he did not want to kill, and so Evans thought that he had actually discovered this labyrinth. This is part of classical mythology. And so he went basically with this in mind, that he was going to find this, and he discovered this thing, this highly complex tunnel network underneath this great palace. So he thought he had found indeed the palace of Minos, and this is confirmation of the labyrinth and the story. It turns out that this was just the wine cellars of this this very expansive palace complex. So again, you have to always be careful with archaeology, but this is how we know what we know. And the Minoans came to an abrupt end, just suddenly at around the year 1200. You can see here kind of the end of the Minoan period, beginning around the year 1200. And there are many theories on why this happened, but it's unclear because we can't decipher their writing. But what is clear is that within a 50-year period, you see a very, very much thriving civilization basically just blotted out of existence. That their large urban centers are abandoned, their massive complexes are abandoned, trade ceases, and this is part of that Bronze Age crisis that I was talking about last time that occurs around 1200, and we'll look at that here in just a moment. But within Minoan Crete, why does this happen? Well, we have to look at myth. Remember Joseph Campbell, and always in legend there is a kernel of truth. So the famous myth, as I talked about just a few moments ago with the King Minos and the Minotaur, and that there was a great bull that was going to be a gift of Poseidon, the god of the sea, and it was given to King Minos in order that he would sacrifice this magnificent creature to the god of the sea, and he, in his hubris, his excessive pride, he did not do this, and therefore the gods made his wife fall madly in love with the creature, and one thing led to another, and sure enough, she becomes pregnant by this creature, and she therefore delivers a half man, half bull, a monster, a minotaur, and so therefore Minos builds this great labyrinth. He has this constructed in order to imprison this creature that he can't find his way out of, and then there is the story of Theseus that comes within this tale. And Theseus is the great hero of Athens. He's the kind of the legendary founder of the city. And he goes to Crete and he slays the Minotaur. But there's the preservation of this memory of this great civilization that existed, and that it perhaps went away from the gods, that it did something bad, and it failed on account of that. What can archaeology tell us? Well, there is these people who suddenly pop up in Crete, in Greece, called the Dorians. And are these a people who invaded, or were these a servile class of people that simply rose up out of the hills at this time of this crisis in 1200, where we see the collapse of centralized authority all over the ancient world? It's unclear, but the Dorians definitely are part of this this Minoan collapse. And we see these people, this new kind of pottery that is Doric pottery, um, coming up all over the place in Greece suddenly. So whether this was an external force that came in and brought about an end of Minoan civilization, remember, they were a seafaring people that relied on their navy. They did not have walls, much like the civilizations in the Indus Valley. Or excuse me, they didn't rely on a navy, but it's much more thought to be a matriarchal society. So we don't know whether it's an invasion or whether it was just simply a servile class, much like maybe the Israelites that rose up and overthrew their former masters. Unclear, but Minoan civilization largely comes to an end at the year 1200. So let us move a little bit farther. So we have been looking at here in Minoan Crete, this island. This is Greece proper, and the region of Mycenaea, right here, which would be it would be Sparta. And Mycenaean Greece, we can see that there are migrations of people that come into Mycenae, and they are coming from modern-day Turkey, or Anatolia as it would have been known in the ancient world. And they are trading partners. They become very much a maritime civilization, trading with Crete. But the difference between Mycenaea and the Mycenaeans and the Minoans are that the Mycenaeans are a very warlike culture. They're much more patriarchal. They build these massive walls and structures. They call them Cyclopean walls because when the ancient Greeks saw them, they thought that only giants could have built these structures, that they were so big. So they believed that the legendary giants, the Cyclops, lived in this place. And this becomes a very rich civilization, and it is preserved within the great story, the Iliad, later written by Homer. That always when someone is referred there from Mycenaea, there is Mycenae, rich in gold. So this it has a memory that this was a very rich, lavishly rich area from that was made through trade and eventually colonization. So these two great Greek civilizations kind of come to an end, and we see sort of this intermediate period and then the sort of birth of classical Greece after this. So there was a massive crisis that occurs around 1200. And there are several theories of why this happens, and again, it's unclear. The ancient world, our sources are not always the best. We just have to theorize at this. And one interesting thought is that there was a massive supervolcano that erupts in the Mediterranean. The volcano of Santorini erupts, and it radically changes the climate. It stops agriculture, therefore paralyzing central authority and bringing people to the break of or the societies to collapse, that the central authorities cannot maintain control, this kind of thing. Plague ensues because people get sick, and it's just a very bad time for several decades. And again, this is all over the ancient world that this happens. This isn't confined to just one place. Then there's another theory that this servile class of people, who we know as the Dorians, rise up, or that they are a group of seafaring invaders that come about, or that there is both a servile rising and then a massive migration of people to other places, which is called the Sea People, this sort of unknown people that turn up in Egypt and suddenly. And then we have the legend of the Trojan War. And the Trojan War begins around 1200, so it's around this time of the Bronze Age collapse. And this was a legendary story that the king Agamemnon that his brother Menelaus, his wife Helen of Sparta, is stolen by the Prince Paris of Troy. Troy is over here in Anatolia, present-day Turkey, and so the Greeks start a war against the Trojans, and this is a war that lasts for 10 years. It brings together all the people of the ancient world, and it's a massive, massive war. And this is a legendary story to some degree. Heinrich Schliemann has sort of the discovery of the 19th century when he finds Troy, but until that time it was really thought to be just mythological, but now it's really thought that it perhaps was a real event. But there is a sort of a legend when these great warriors return after being away for 10 years that almost all of them return to their own civilizations being overthrown, that they have been, that pirates are ruling their lands, that their societies that 10 years ago were fine are now in anarchy and chaos, and they have to sort of win back their lands and their societies and their privilege, their place, and many of them are killed and this kind of thing. So there is this memory within this literature, this Homeric literature of the Trojan War and the Iliad, that something bad happened when these guys went away to fight. So did the Dorians, who were their slaves, rise up when all the warriors left? Again, it's unclear, but that is one theory, and I think there is some evidence within literature to support this. So who were these sea people? And there is, again, when on the return from Troy, there's called these the nostoi, the return stories, and we see these people, these Greeks who are going other places, that they decide not to go home, that they decide to go and conquer other places. And we see everywhere anarchy in society, invasions happening in the Bronze Age crisis, and we have preserved in the Merneptah stele in Egypt around 1209 BC, it has a list of sea people. And these are the invaders here. This is a relief from the Merneptah stele, and it shows these Greek-like seafarers trying to push their way into Egypt here, and the Egyptians attempting to repel them. And the Merneptah lists these people as the Shaddana, the Teresh, the Daeans, the Denians, and the Plessids. So rendered in English, these are the Sardinians, the Tuscans, or the Etruscans, who will become the one of the earliest civilizations in Italy, that are influenced the Romans. And the Denians are known in the ancient world as the Greeks, and these are probably the Plessids are the Philistines, who immigrate and are made famous with their relationship with Israel. And the interesting thing that the sites where these people go and settle in the ancient Near East or in the Levant regions, say in Philistia, which is very near Israel, that we actually find at the earliest sites of occupation Mycenaean pottery. So these sea people very well could have been Greeks. It could have been the Greeks that were coming home from the Trojan War, or it could have been another sort of invasion force. So I leave you with that to contemplate, but this is sort of the mystery of the sea people and the invasions during the Bronze Age crisis. So now let us turn to the Phoenicians. So the Phoenicians are really the great seafarers of the ancient world, along with the Mycenaean Greeks and the Minoans. But the Phoenicians really take this to a new level. That they were the shippers for everyone. They delivered Egyptian grain to civilizations all over the world. They were a vast trading empire. They were merchants, and they moved everything for everyone on the sea. And they were great explorers. They made it all the way as far as Spain, and they laid colonies. They would establish trading posts everywhere they went, along this, especially along the north rim of Africa along the Mediterranean. They founded the famous city of Carthage and many of the great cities of the ancient world in northern Africa and along and in the isles in the Mediterranean. So the Phoenicians, to some degree, competed with the Greeks. The Phoenicians are probably more influential. They were more successful, but they were at a great place in their city of Tyre here to play on this great Silk Road trade. Remembering that all this stuff that everyone wants, the spices, the silks, all the wonderful things and luxuries of the world are coming all the way out here from East Asia and China into ultimately the ancient Near East here and the Levant. And the Phoenicians then shipped this all over the ancient world. So they are particularly famous for one of their dyes that they Phoenician purple, that they are able to create this just stunningly beautiful purple that is worn by royalty and emperors and things like that. But they are particularly famous for this color of purple that they can make, and can only be made from this particular mollusk that is within the harbors of Tyre and Sidon. And along with their trading networks, they also found colonies everywhere. And you can see here that they are in the south of the Mediterranean, and then the Greeks colonized here in the north of the Mediterranean. And again, the Phoenicians are much more prolific in this. So how did they do this? This is sort of the earliest Phoenician trading cog here, and that they are excellent seafarers, that they're able to develop a ship that is far superior to everyone else's, that they would be able to both sail and row, and will eventually, it's a lighter ship, and it's not a warship like a Greek trireme here, but it's a very highly effective shipping vessel for the Mediterranean. And the Phoenicians, as I said at the beginning of this lecture, invented alphabetic writing. This is the earliest form of alphabetic writing, that we move here from pictographs. Remember that all writing in the ancient world or most of the writing in the ancient world is pictographic, meaning that one symbol equals a meaning for some object. A bird looks like a bird, whereas the Phoenicians developed many symbols that can be sounds. Therefore, it allows them to be able to communicate highly complex ideas in a way that you simply can't do with pictographic writing very easily. And the Phoenician legacy of alphabetic writing, it heavily influences Greek writing. So the Greeks will take this, they will use it, and it's very good to be able to have alphabetic writing. So we will pick up later with classical Greece, but I really wanted to dive in for just a moment here and see kind of the richness of Phoenicia, of Bronze Age Greece, and the ancient world, that this legacy that was bequeathed to us from these great maritime empires that start building the civilizations of the ancient world. So thanks for watching. Stay healthy, wealthy, and wise until next time.